does it?
I think you got a little.
Well, the MOU has been signed. The potential of a pipeline just got a little bit closer to the finish line. Just a little bit closer. Daniel Smith is ecstatic. Mark Carney looking like a good guy to his base. Seems like everyone is happy. We're going to be getting into the details of what exactly did they agree to. And quite frankly, there was more positives for Alberta than I actually thought was going to happen. However, again, there's a lot of hurdles to get over moving forward. So we're going to look at the details of the MOU. What did they agree to? What's going to happen? And how is this going to add to the drama that's happening in the provincial politics in Alberta, the provincial politics in BC, and the federal politics out of Ottawa, baby? We are going to be getting into all of it. Welcome to the Elevate Podcast. I'm your host, Josh. Getting value from today's episode, take the time to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us to grow. It helps us to get to new audiences. It helps people see that there is something different than what the mainstream media has to offer. And well, don't forget, we are also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all of it, wherever you get podcasts. Download my voice into your dome. Now let's get into our first story, shall we? So they said Daniel Smith, Mark Carney got together in Alberta this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are in the country at this point, and signed on the MOU of potentially getting a pipeline built to Tidewater and BC, baby. This is a big thing. People have been wanting this for a long time. Alberta specifically, but as well as people in Canada. It's like, yeah, it would be nice that if we could sell our oil to someone who isn't the U.S. That'd be nice. It'd be nice to get some more competitive pricing and help our country make more money. That'd be fantastic. That'd be awesome. We'd love to see it. So we got closer to that deal, and we're going to get into the details of what that is. But first, this is the nice 1 minute of Daniel Smith and Mark Carney signing this thing away. And there's something really small that happens near the end. I want you to keep an ear out for. I'm going to turn the volume up on this sucker. And just, we're going to keep that. We're going to listen to it, lock that in our brains, keep it away for later because it is fascinating.
Is your pens or first? All right, so the way we've done this before, Doug is sign it and look up.
Okay, you want to sign and look up?
Yeah.
They won't be able to tell if it's just a photo with it.
All right.
There we go. Very good penmanship.
They're signing again.
Lost
Now
art.
listen for this.
Thanks.
You do the tongue.
Is that how he does it?
I think you got a little thumbs up.
He reads his signatures too.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't hear or make out what was happening, Daniel Smith was talking about, hey, we're going to sign this first, then we're going to look up, then we're going to hold it up. And, he makes a joke about, well, it's a photo. No one's going to really care. And they kind of make a joke back and forth about that issue. Then they sign, they hold up the MOU for the cameras. And you hear Mark Carney say, we got to do the Trump. And that's what he did. He just pulled it up, held it up. Ha-ha. Trump. Trump. And Daniel was like, oh, is that what he does? He makes nice signatures too. Again, this is really interesting to kind of hear this talk between the two of them, especially given all the issues that Mark Carney said and the things he said about Donald Trump, him just being like, yeah, we're going to do the Trump. Bah! He wants to be like Donald Trump. He's like, oh, look, it's like Trump. You could take it as him mocking him. I don't know. Just an interesting little detail of the day. However, yes, let's get to the MOU itself. So this is Alberta's press release on it, and this is what they agreed to from the MOU, which is fairly interesting. This new energy agreement includes a declaration by the federal government that an Indigenous co-owned Alberta bitumen pipeline to Asian markets is a project of national interest. The agreement that the parties will work together to facilitate the application, approval, and construction of privately financed and constructed 1 million plus barrels per day Indigenous co-owned bitumen pipeline to Asian markets through strategic deep water port. Commitment by the federal government that it will not be implementing the federal oil and gas emissions cap. An immediate suspension of the federal clean electricity regulations. An agreement the parties will work together and construction of thousands of megawatts of AI computing power with a large portion dedicated to sovereign computing for Canada and its allies. Commitment by both governments to partner with Pathways companies to finance and construct the world's largest carbon capture utilization storage. In order to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, the Alberta federal government will design and commit to globally competitive long-term carbon pricing and sector-specific stringency factors by April 1st, 2026. Entering into a methane equivalency agreement by April 1st with a 2035 target date and a 75% reduction target relative to 2014 methane emissions levels. An agreement to immediately consult and work with Indigenous partners and the government of British Columbia to ensure their people enjoy substantial economic and financial benefit from the pipeline, and significantly decrease regulatory uncertainty through a variety of changes to various legislation, regulation, and policy. As I said, there was more agreed to from the Liberal side than I honestly thought we were going to get out of this one. And one thing that really kind of caught my eye, and this is what the part that is really the most concerning about it, is you're going to work with British Columbia to make sure that they benefit from this also. We're using some subjective language there that, do they get veto power? We don't know. Does Alberta just have to agree to work with them? Yes. What does that mean? Does Alberta have to, if Alberta shows an effort to work with BC and BC just is a bump on the log and doesn't do a whole lot, does that count as working with BC and do they get to move forward with it? These are some things, again, there are just some very subjective statements and a little vague terminology used in this, which, well, what we said about Mark Carney this whole time, he works in the gray to make sure things don't really happen. So as I said, this is a good start. It's a good step forward. However, we will see where this goes. We'll see what Mr. Eby's response to this is. I don't know if he'll be too stoked. We'll see. Maybe he'll feign frustration and get really up in his feelings. I don't know. However, the thing that really caught my eye, and it should have caught your eye as well, is this point right here. Commitment by both governments to partner with Pathways companies to finance and construct the world's largest carbon capture, utilization, and storage project for the purpose of making Alberta bitumen amongst the lowest emission intensity barrel of heavy oil in the world. This one's very interesting because you have the Pathways Alliance, which is essentially a group of 6 oil companies working together to essentially push these pipelines forward. And they have a spin-off incentive or a spin-off project from this called the Pathways Plus, which is the carbon capture aspect of whatever they do in terms of putting pipelines down, that they will build the infrastructure of carbon capture beside it, and they call that Pathways Plus. The interesting thing is the amount of money that's going into investing into the Pathways Plus. We see it from the CBC report here. First off, the two sides are committed to increasing the industrial carbon price in the province, moving from $95 a ton to a minimum of $130 a ton. The federal government had previously demanded that price rise to $170 a ton initially by 2030. Both sides say they are committed to net zero by 2050, which we discussed. But to help achieve that goal, both Canada and Alberta are moving ahead with the Pathways Plus, an Alberta-based carbon capture, utilization, and storage project, which could reduce the emissions intensity of exports from the province's oil sands. The two sides are also agreeing to drastically lower methane emissions associated with the oil patch. There's going to be a significant amount of money put into this Pathways Plus project. Again, the companies who are in the Pathways Alliance are going to figure out ways that they're going to do their own research and understanding of how they can make sure they do this whole carbon capture situation. But there is a company on the outside who specializes in carbon capture technology who will likely be benefiting directly from this portion of the deal if it were to go through. As I said, there's always going to be a way for Brookfield to benefit. This company is called Entropy. Entropy specializes in carbon capture technology, which they will likely be selling and providing to the companies of this Pathways Alliance to be used along a potential pipeline production. That is what is very fascinating. MP Cooper brought this up in the House of Commons yesterday, and of course, Liberals dismissed it as fugazi, dismissed it as a conspiracy theory. Listen to this.
Sure, it is being reported that the government's MOU with Alberta includes a multi-billion-dollar investment in carbon capture with Pathways Alliance, the premier carbon capture company connected with Pathways Alliance is none other than Entropy, which is owned by none other than Brookfield. Is the reason it has taken the government so long to get a deal with Alberta because the Prime Minister has been busy getting a deal for Brookfield.
Yeah.
So just before they respond, I want to be clear. Hear what he said there. He said that there's a company that's going to be associated with this Pathways Alliance group who specializes in carbon capture technology and storage. That's what he said, okay? Just I want to make sure that's abundantly clear. And that company that's providing that service happens to be owned by Brookfield, okay? That's very specific. I need you to hear that because now listen to the response.
Speaker, I hate to break up their conspiracy theory, but Pathways is actually owned by 6 large oil companies, not Entropy.
That didn't answer the question, nor did Cooper say that. He didn't say that Entropy owned Pathways Alliance. Nobody owns Pathways Alliance. It's a consortium of 6 oil companies. It's that Entropy is closely related and works closely with the Pathways Alliance. They're on the outside, but they work closely with them. And that was the concern. Yet they turned around saying, conspiracy theory, you're lying. No one owns Pathways Alliance, especially not Entropy. But here's the response back to that.
Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, the very Brookfield fund that the Prime Minister stands to make millions of dollars in future bonus pay invested $300 million in Entropy. So, in the face of that, can the government provide the assurance that the deal negotiated by the Prime Minister will in no way benefit Entropy and, by extension, the Prime Minister's financial portfolio?
Again, a very reasonable ask. Okay, if you think that's all fugaz and you want to kind of misrepresent the argument, can you at least guarantee this, that Entropy will not benefit from any deal between Alberta and Canada, and in extension, that Mark Carney will not benefit because Brookfield owns Entropy? Can you guarantee that? Well, here's the response.
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, here we go again, conspiracy theory. We're focused on building Canada. We're focused on working with Alberta to grow our natural resources in a responsible way in consultation with First Nations. That's how we build, not conspiracy theory.
Couldn't answer the question because it's true. If this goes forward, and again, this aspect of this carbon capture project with the Pathways Plus, well, Entropy is going to benefit directly from that because a bunch of money is going to funnel into carbon capture storage technology that, by relation, is going to benefit the likes of Entropy, who is owned by Brookfield, who is going to get kickbacks to Mr. Mark Carney and the stocks he owns in Brookfield. Alas, here we are. This is where we're at. So as I said, neither side are going to be happy about this. I've already seen online, Albertans are not happy because of the industrial carbon price agreement. They're not happy about the carbon capture storage aspect of this. And then you have the Liberals who are just not happy that they're even considering that this could potentially happen. And as well, people are not, both sides are actually really annoyed by BC having a say in this. Liberals are mad that Prime Minister is giving it up to BC to make a decision on this and not making it a federal decision. And the Conservatives are really mad that BC has veto power and that the federal government is just not pushing this forward. Both are, everyone's mad at BC through this. Everyone's mad that BC has a say in this is really what's happening. So that is the deal. That is where things are at with this MOU. We will see where this goes. Another promise is that once some Indigenous consultation and negotiations with BC take place, Alberta, as the current proponent of this pipeline, will present its plan to the Major Projects Office for expedited review by July 1st, 2026. So we're still waiting for that to happen. And then if you go down 2 paragraphs there, it says, according to an Alberta official who spoke to reporters at a background briefing, the intention is to get shovels in the ground on this project by 2029. This thing is operating at a snail's pace. We are going to get this in for expedited review by July 1st, 2026, and we'll see what the answer comes to be, and we might get shovels in the ground by 2029. Do you know what's happening in 2029? Donald Trump is not going to be in power. Carney is likely not going to be in power. And we don't even know if Daniel Smith will be in power by then. But somehow, some way, expeditious review here, we're going to get shovels in the ground by 2029. That is probably the most disappointing part of all this, is it's all moving at a snail's pace while we are getting absolutely smoked on all sides from a revenue perspective in this country. So again, as I said, we'll see where this all goes. We'll see if this is all theater or if Mark Carney is for real. But anyways, I'll see you later. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.